Miss plowing last night, Jim?
No, not at all. Not
Okay,
at all.
now you're live on YouTube.
Okay. There you go. So I'll call to order the January 27th, 2021 meeting of the Public Works Planning Board and read, pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, GL Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Southborough, I'll change it to Public Works Planning Board instead of Advisory Committee that it says, will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties with a right and or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on Town of Southborough's website at www.southboroughtown.com. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch or participate in the meeting may do so in the following manner by finding it at southboroughma.com/remote meetings. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the procedures in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on Southborough's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. We are good with that. So I will turn things over to Karen because we wanted to, first we want to do the minutes. So did people get a chance to review the draft minutes from 19 years ago when we last met?
Yeah.
Yes.
I did. I had one small comment on it, Bill, but I did look at it.
Go ahead, Sam.
On the first line, it said Bill called the meeting to order. I'd probably be clearer to say Bill Boland called the meeting to order.
Okay, even though I think I'm the only Bill, but
You
we're
are.
good with we're good with that. Anything else?
That's it.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes with that minor correction.
So move.
Okay, those in favor, Boland, aye.
Aye.
Diver.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Next agenda item, Karen, did you want to skip forward to discuss complete streets?
I think that would be good, just so that since Greg, is it Jim? Greg and Jim? I can't
John.
remember the
John.
totally making up names now too.
Yeah.
So that since they're here.
Yeah, okay. So we will move forward to agenda item number 2 and review and discuss complete streets, priority list. Go ahead, Karen.
Actually, I'm turning it over to Greg.
Okay, we'll turn it over to Greg.
All right. So thanks for entertaining us here. So I just wanted to give kind of
Entertaining you or?
Oh, the entertainment
inviting
hasn't
us
started yet.
We'll be the entertainment, I guess. Yeah, I just want to give a brief overview of the program itself, what we've done so far, and I guess the next steps of where we're going. We didn't prepare a formal slideshow, but if we would go through the exhibits and then some of the information that we have available to us at the time, at this moment. But, so in general, this is for the Massdot Complete Streets program. The town had a policy approved through Massdot and secured funding to hire an engineering consultant to assist in preparation of a complete streets prioritization plan that will be put on file with the state. And once that is approved by Massdot, funding becomes available for projects that are included on that plan. The Massdot's intent of that plan is to basically develop a 5-year plan worth of projects. And, they have a list of eligible projects, ineligible projects. Just quickly share my screen here. So, just so everyone can see that, we have listing of eligible projects. They're broken into 4 different categories of traffic safety, bicycle facilities, pedestrian facilities, and transit facilities. And then under those, there are subtasks that each project has to fit in. And the goal of the prioritization plan is to kind of have a wide variety of projects and the types of projects that you're looking for. This is the place to put any wish list items. So if you want to bike pedestrian bridge over Route 9, by all means, feel free to put it on here. Of course, unlikely to be built anytime soon, but if DOT comes through and decides to rebuild Route 9, it's at least documented that, the town wants something at location X. And and it's just kind of a way of documenting things. And then you want a mixture of small projects, big projects. And also, in the list I sent around, you'll notice that a lot of roads are on there multiple times with multiple projects. And kind of the goal there is that you could have a project that if you are, say just going and doing a quick mill and overlay, you have a project there that calls for bike lanes, you can restripe if you have enough space. Whereas if you're looking for something where a sidewalk is more expensive, there's a separate project that includes building a sidewalk. And then you can kind of cherry pick these projects for application. And one of the goals being you want to have a series of projects that is most attractive to the state to fund through the grant program. And then every 5 years, you have the chance to update the plan. In 5 years, who knows what the plan is going to look like? Could be supplemented, could be discontinued, could be increased depending on what the plan is and the budget is for the state. And they're also looking at recently, they've been focused, now they're focusing on somewhat larger projects that incorporate more of the complete streets elements. So they aren't, so they're scoring higher projects that include, transit connections, shared use paths, or, full complete streets. We have sidewalks, bike lanes, etc. Things that involve destinations. And they're a little less excited about just the small segments of sidewalks everywhere. So we kind of, when we do this, we try and keep that in mind and cater, at least find some projects that we can cater to that idea. And then the other thing is they're also focused on making sure that everybody gets some of the money. So if you've already received a grant, you get essentially sent to the back of the pack. So this is kind of good for you in that you haven't applied for anything yet, you haven't gotten anything yet, so you should be further to the top of the list. So they are trying to spread out the money that is available. So I guess that's the big advantage moving forward here. So like I said, we have a variety of projects, and most of these projects that are on the plan that I circulated fall into select categories. They're almost all either providing new sidewalks, bike lanes, shared use paths, signal improvements at certain locations. And just because that's usually what most town infrastructure can handle. We're not in Boston where we're looking for transit priority lanes. We did put in the replacement of the CSX crossing on Main Street, that's kind of the one that we do have. We don't have a lot of bus routes or bus stops, and I don't think MWRTA pulled out the existing bus stop that was on Main Street as part of the Main Street project. So we didn't really.
They were supposed to move that around the corner.
They were, and then
Did they?
I think they just decided it wasn't. It was going to operate. It operates as a flag service,
Okay, that's fine.
so it's not. They decided they didn't need a designated space. So, and then there's a few different ways to do this, and so we develop in order to rank projects, we develop a set of criteria.
That's really, really small.
I know.
Yeah.
Here, let's see here.
Especially on an iPhone.
It's also very blurry when you zoom in, but just in general, we have like nine categories that we're ranking them in. We base it on 1 through 5 just to not get too super technical. And we're looking at traffic volumes, the existing and potential pedestrian and bicycle activity, traffic speeds, crash history, connections to key nodes. So are we just building a sidewalk in the middle of nowhere? Is there a school there? Is it Main Street? Is there a sidewalk that exists and we're just adding on to it? And then we get into more project specific things where we have, is there available right of way? Or is the project designed? Environmental impacts. And from that, we're looking at what type of permitting do we need? Do we need no permitting? Do we need MIPA involvement or just local, like an NOI, or the contractor just needs to get a pollution protection plan when they go to construction? We have constructability. So do we need to move every utility pole on the street? Is there a closed drainage system that we have to deal with? Stuff like that. And then lastly, we put in a criteria for context sensitive design that just basically gives the town the option to kind of like, all right, this is important, yes, we can do this, we can do that. And then there's other ways we can change the criteria, we can add criteria. We had one town that was specifically interested in focusing on areas around schools. So we added a criteria to benefit projects that were in school walking areas.
Greg?
Yep.
Can I ask a question about the scoring system?
Yes.
Is this something that the state now proposed, this particular scoring system, or is this VHB's?
This is one we came up with.
Do you think that the state actually has confidence in this one in terms of ranking?
So in reality, I mean, the state, for the ranking piece of it, so, and I'll just slide over here for a second. So this is the sheet that I circulated. Try and make it a little bigger.
Can we get a copy of the spreadsheet? All I think I saw was the PDF.
Yep.
Karen, do you have the spreadsheet?
Yeah, so we can send the spreadsheet on.
Yeah, then we can actually slide it and.
Yep. So, and what I think there's a difference between the ranking and then the town's priority. So just because, so I went through and ranked things in a specific way, or I scored things and then I just let the score result in the ranking.
Mm-hmm. But does the state care about our
The state doesn't care about the rank. The state doesn't care about the ranking as long as it was done in a thoughtful manner.
Okay, so basically we will submit a list and they will look at the projects regardless of where we've ranked them.
That's right.
So because they pay no attention to our rankings, they just look at.
They're just looking. They're looking at.
They want to fund.
Why they're looking at? They want to know. They want to look at the projects and say, yeah, all right. This is a reasonable project list that's fits the intent of the program.
Do they see our rankings? Do we send them a sheet with our?
So they won't see the, so they won't see the specific, they will see, so you'll rank them as you see fit. They won't see what the
Okay. But
score.
They'll see our priority. They will know
That's
which one we think is most important.
Yes, and this is just a way to assist in prioritizing.
Okay.
Like for instance, we had a town that had there's a specific road that they wanted a sidewalk on. It was their top priority. It's on a tip job, so it's going to get built in 4 years or something like that.
Mhm.
So they put it on the list, and they put it as priority number 1, even though it was ranked significantly lower, just because there was so much stuff that had to happen, right of way, environmental permitting, stuff like that. So let me find what the actual list looks like.
When does this list have to be submitted to the state?
For funding this, so there's 2 rounds of funding for tier 3, which is when you actually apply for a specific project. One is in April, and one I believe is either September or October.
So we could try to get our list in for the April round.
So if in that case, it needs to be in towards the end of February.
Mhm.
So
Any reason why we couldn't do that from a procedural standpoint? Do we have all the information we need from that now in terms of our
Yeah.
ranking?
you should have, so this is this is what actually gets uploaded to the state. So
If I could read it.
yeah, I know. So
Very, very impressive.
so you have the project rank, the name, description, whether it's an environmental justice population or serves an environmental justice population, the project limits, coordinates, and then you have this, where did it come from? So is it a needs assessment? Did a private development say that they needed it? Maintenance plan. So, the 5-year paving plan can serve as the basis for one. The town's master plan can serve as a basis. If Eversource is coming through to upgrade a gas main somewhere, that's a reason to put it on. That's an acceptable reason to put it on the list from their standpoint. Then we list the abbreviations for the type of project. So P1, T1.
Okay.
The specific needs.
Mhm.
If it spans multiple communities, what the total estimated project cost is, what you're requesting, and then, so for instance, if we were putting on a project that was $1 million, so we're going to request $400,000 from the program. Whereas if is the other $600,000 funded?
Mhm.
So is it funded through Chapter 90, the general fund, MassWorks grant, something like that? Then
For Karen, if I can. Karen, is there any reason why we shouldn't be working to get this proposal into the state by end of February for this funding round?
No, I think the sooner the better. And so that was actually, because we started with that question kind of, Greg, so they just get the full list and then they don't have to approve the list. They just get the list and we say, and this is our project. By the way, we want money for it.
so they have to approve the list.
Oh, they do. Okay.
They have to approve the list. And we've had clients and municipalities, submit 5 projects on a list, 15 projects. Some of the smaller towns out in the Berkshires that don't have a lot of roads. We've had ones that submitted projects upwards of 100 projects. For the most part, I think I've only heard of one municipality that got it sent back, and I think it was for having too many projects on the list. We usually aim for about 50. And again, with some of those projects, of those 50, 4 might make up a single roadway project. So for instance, so if you take, just because I know some of it, if you take Corderville Road, the Corderville Road project from, so Corderville Road, shows up about 8 times on this list. So we have sidewalk from the Woodward School to the causeway. We have a sidewalk from the causeway, over the causeway. We have a sidewalk connection through Route 9. And then we have the sidewalk that goes from DPW facility all the way down to Southville Road. So those are all separate projects. We have, and then we kind of isolated a couple of improvements, basically starting at Richards Road and going south, with the intent to kind of, between the DPW and Richards Road, there's not, there's already a sidewalk. We're replacing the sidewalk. We're providing wider shoulders, but we're not providing what would be considered bike lanes, just because of the wetlands and for right-of-way purposes. So there's not a ton in that stretch for the state to get all that excited about. Richards Road, if we provide pedestrian equipment to the signal at Richards Road, if we, we're able to provide, say, because there's a little more space down there. I'll be honest, based on the available information we have, you don't necessarily need the turn lanes. So if you were to do, like take the turn lanes out and provide bike lanes or a shared use path or something down there, then that's something that MassDOT can say, all right, you're repurposing the roadway for, other users rather than cars. So they look at that. And then if you go to go to the intersection of Southville, where we have the signal, the existing pedestrian equipment there and the wheelchair ramps aren't ADA compliant. They were when they were built. They don't meet current standards now. Same thing with the pedestrian ramps, or the pedestrian pathway through the Mbta station.
Greg, are we better off thinking about bundling some of these things? For example, one of the things we've talked about in the town is, say, we need a pedestrian-friendly north-south access route. So you take all the way from Southville all the way up to Framingham Road into Marlborough, right there. One could think about that as a complete project. One of the things that we've heard as we talked to various state representatives is that the Massdot is interested in people using public transit more. So in fact, packaging that as a way to allow people to ride the train and then either walk or bike or scooter or whatever from there up to the Route 9 business areas and all the way into Marlborough, for example, thinking about that as one continuous project. That's a lot of money. On the other hand, my thought was maybe that's something that would be interesting.
So
does that make sense?
Yeah. So I mean, and I think from the standpoint of the plan, I think because yes, it would be a lot of money, and I don't think you could do it all in one shot. Now, that being said, we were looking, so the Framingham Road and the portion of Marlborough Road that goes up to the Marlborough City line, in front of Acre Bridge, and that whole area, it's wide. It's you don't have the environmental issues, but you have the opportunity, because the road is so wide, you have the opportunity to provide sidewalks or shared use path or bike lanes or something like that within the existing roadway layout, so minimal right-of-way impacts. It's a big job. So you have, because you have the signals both at 85 and at Route 30.
30.
And, so that I would look at that and say, that's a better job for Mass DOT and the state tip.
But there's also an interesting bike opportunity for part of that, going from Marlboro along Route 30 over to the Causeway and toward Framingham there. So that's an important thing
Yes.
too, in terms of biking and pedestrian access.
Yep.
If you could think
One of
about the package.
Sorry. One of the biggest problems we have though is the causeway getting across them.
Right.
So that's part of why we kind of end up breaking stuff up a little bit too, because we really don't have the width on the causeway to do a real bike lane or a real pedestrian. I mean, if we could widen the lanes, I think we could do sharrows, but you wouldn't have pedestrian, which right now we at least have like a 4-foot shoulder for walking. And so I think that's part of why we kind of keep dividing things up, because you only get with this project or these complete streets, the max you can get is 400,000, right?
400,000.
So if we keep them in smaller lumps and then, the causeway's the connection between these two different projects that have been completed or something, I think it also makes that rise to a better project to some degree.
Yeah.
And
But
I think this, just because of, from an environmental standpoint, I think the causeways kind of rise to that wish list type of project. They should be done at some point. Unfortunately, it's probably going to happen when there's a hole in the dike.
Hole in the dike.
Yeah.
You'd mentioned, Greg, putting a sidewalk across the causeway. How would they do that? I mean, I've seen places, for example, that cantilever, like a 10-foot wide pedestrian access that you could drive an angled pile into the foundation there and not have to go down into the reservoir.
Right. So you
it
could
is
do,
a backup water supply, so it's not like Mbta uses that all the
yeah.
time.
So I mean, I think in that instance, I think a boardwalk, some type of boardwalk, that's going to be that would be the best or the most feasible solution.
Yeah.
To any of those.
Yeah.
Again, so that's still, it does require MWRA and DCR.
Right. But I think that my point, I guess, is packaging these things in ways that are part of an overall plan, and then bite-sized pieces of that somehow seems to me to be a pretty interesting story to be able to tell, to say, we've got a 10-year plan that has 4 components to it, and we're going to try to fund them, one at a time here. But when it gets done, it will connect the T station to Marlboro or to Route 9 businesses, or Framingham to Marlboro, et cetera. And I think that kind of story is at least something that we're pretty interested in. So.
And I think the idea is to kind of like take the capital plan, the town's 5-year capital plan, and kind of break up some of the complete streets projects, or break some of those projects, or identify the complete streets components of those projects for funding through this program, so that you can, say if Corderville from DPW to Southville is $1 million, then identify a piece of that is worth, that you think that the state can justify a $400,000 grant for, and then you only have to come up with $600,000 for that full stretch.
Only. Perfect.
Well,
but
Petty cash.
yes,
that is definitely one of the things that a lot, like now that we have the spine of Main Street, that's kind of what we've been working with is, okay, now we can reach south a little on 85, we can reach north, and we have, well, Sam, you approved it, through the selectmen that, we have survey going on Marlboro to get up that way. So now we have all these, we kind of just kept spreading it like a little virus, right? And hopefully we'll get, as we get funding and as we get things, money for these projects, and hopefully there is some other money, more than more than one project a year, it would be extremely crazy for our town to actually be able to do. But I think we have right now it kind of in the box, like 3 or 4 projects that we all think are good. And, you know, one of them's Corderville, one of them's the downtown, which also includes Deerfoot and Flag intersection and Newton Street. And then we have the St. Mark's intersection that hopefully we get that grant, but I am 0 for 2 right now on that thing. But for the St. Mark's and Street and 85 intersection, because that's going to add some sidewalk. And then we have the next set of Marlborough Road to add more sidewalk. So like we have, and I think if we do one of those, you know, now the next one's like, oh, great, now we can get complete streets money, or, oh, now there's another shared streets grant. We can keep piecing it together, and, oh, we're continuing this complete streets plan that we have, that's why the plan is helpful, I think, for the other ones. Like, oh, we've been looking at this, and this is like, it does kind of show a long-term plan of connectivity, and that's, I think, what they're trying to get us to do.
Yep, that's what I hear too. Hey, Greg, you mentioned earlier that the pedestrian bridges across Route 9, that was something I've been interested in for a long time. I know that's unlikely to happen anytime soon, but is that not something that should be on the list if we're interested in it?
No, I think that's definitely something that could be on the list.
But it's not here now, right?
It's not here because I didn't know.
Yeah.
I did mention it to Karen, and I'm like, I think that's more for you guys to say. Where I don't know where exactly where would be best to put that.
Yeah, I think, Karen, I was just mentioning the Route 9 pedestrian bridges been on my list for a while, and I know it's not likely to happen soon. But Greg commented earlier that it's useful to give Massdot a signal that we're interested in that, should they do, you know, rebuilding on Route 9 for us. So I'd be in favor of putting, you know, Parkerville and Oak Hill pedestrian bridges in there somewhere as a placeholder.
I think that's a good idea, and that's one of the good discussions to have, that, you know, is there anything that we do want to add? And I think that makes sense. Like, put them on, right? What's the worst that happens?
Yep.
We don't get money for it someday, right?
And the other question I had too, Karen, in terms of the list was I didn't see much on here that strikes me as being relative to the current conversation by the Trails Committee. They're trying to close the connection on various trails in town. I don't think there was a representative from Trails on the original Sidewalk Committee 5 years ago, as I recall. So I think it might be worth revisiting to see if there's something that they are eager to get done. I know the causeways is an important thing for them because you can't get across either or any of the causeways now, and there's some key trail links that depend on that. But there may be maybe some other places where they say this is an important connector for the trail network. And again, Greg, I would think that trails that connect all 5 boroughs or larger Metro West trail network might be an interesting thing for Massdot as well. Is that not the likely?
That would be something, you know. So you know, for instance, the shared streets grant, they specifically called out, you know, you could provide, you know, parking for at some of those trailheads.
Right.
The one issue with the grants when it comes to the trails, a lot of these trails, is that they're DCR controlled. So Massdot doesn't necessarily like to deal with DCR any more than the rest of us.
Massdot could actually, though, be very helpful. For example, if you put a causeway or pedestrian access across the Route 30 causeway from Main Street, East Main Street over to Center Street.
Yep.
That could provide an important connection to several of the trail networks in town that people could actually get over there without taking their life in their hands.
Yeah.
If they do today, they bike and walk across there, which is crazy. So again, that's something that Massdot could do independently, presumably, and do something that connects DCR resources. So anyway. Yeah, I'm interested in having a robust list of placeholders at least, so they know what we're thinking about, even though we don't think that they're maybe likely to get funded in the near term.
Yep. Oh no, yeah.
The one thing about too much with the trails too, and this is not because, you know, I walk and bike trails all over the place, and I love when places have them, but for me, from my point of view, basically just because I've got to look at it from the DPW end of things, It's so expensive to get sidewalks in and to have our actual street infrastructure a little less cut up and, more walkable, that it's great. But if they can give us $10,000 to do something on a trail, or we have a chance to get $300,000 to put a sidewalk in, I'd rather get $300,000. So I kind of want to keep the trail stuff as, when we revisit, once we get a couple of good projects in, it would be easier to add those things. I mean, the causeway sidewalk is always, that's something that anytime if we could ever get that, that would be great. But aside from that one, I'm not saying we shouldn't put it. I don't vote.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting, Karen, that we put a request in for trail money per se, but to understand from the Trails Committee, where are the gaps that they would like to close, like the causeway, for example. And there's some other places where sidewalks, for example, are very important to them. And so it's not to build new trails, but to build the connecting pieces in the trails network that are highway or sidewalk related, I guess, is what I was trying to suggest. So I think we're on the same page with that. So.
Okay, that makes sense. Sorry.
I'd be interested in getting input from the Trails Committee to say, are there places as we think about, sidewalks, causeways, et cetera, that are important in terms of the overall trail network, and that would be, I think, a useful thing to know.
So, just I guess from that note, this is a site that's on Massdot's website. It's not entirely up to date because it doesn't give. This shows all the sidewalks, bicycle accommodations in the town. Not up to date because it doesn't give us credit for Main Street.
Mm-hmm. Is yellow supposed to be bicycle access?
Yellow is actually a bus route.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna say I don't believe it if it's supposed to be bicycle.
Green. So these green. This is shared. Those are shared use paths, or they're what they have classified as shared use paths. And then the blue is either the light blue is a sidewalk on one side of the road. The darker blue is on both sides. So this, and there's obviously a sidewalk on Southville now. Mm-hmm. So that's fully connected. But this just gives you a general overview, and I think we have a.
So that picture is presumably not complete, but anything that's shown there is probably there, but there are pieces that aren't shown there that are there.
That's right.
Okay.
This and so this is kind of this is one we pulled together that we could update with the stuff that we know is there. And it also just kind of makes it, I think it's kind of gives an idea of, and in this case we have, dots being a sidewalk on one side of the road, solid green being sidewalk on both sides. But
do we have this map, Karen?
Not yet.
Oh.
I just got it. John pulled it together about an hour ago.
Hot off the press.
That's right.
But very helpful. It'd be great to get a copy of this one too.
Yeah. But I mean, one thing, looking at the map like this, so we had the sidewalk committee list. So when I started pulling together projects, I started with that list and then just kind of started supplementing with other projects. And one thing to look at, there are a lot of these roads where like General Henry Knox, John Matthews Road were on the sidewalk list. I mean, when I look at this map, there are sections, like I would say, and there very well may be reasons why it's not there, and that it may be there, and I don't know it off the top of my head.
What is the red again?
Well, the red is nothing. That's just a roadway.
Okay.
So there's no sidewalk, no pedestrian accommodations that we know of. So this would be something to put on the list to say connect all these neighborhoods.
Yep.
Then maybe you have one project that goes from Fairview to Schuyler to connect that. Mm-hmm. And then you have another project that goes from Fairview.
Gilmore.
Yeah. down Parkerville to Gilmore.
I like
Yeah,
the
that-
one going north up over the pedestrian bridge at Parkerville. across
Yep.
that line.
And then we can carry it up to connect to that. Yeah, so the idea is kind of like, obviously it's cheaper to build these, cheaper at the time to build the small sections. You get the cost of economy, if you build one big project at once, but there's options there's possibilities to pick some of these little small connections off and kind of
Right.
expand the project as, so it's one of those things where, all right, well, if we're going to be paving in this area,
Right.
then let's focus on this street so we can put a sidewalk.
Let's have a list of those that are sort of the quick hits,
Yep.
easy connector kind of things that when we can, let's take advantage of.
So, and that's what you want, that prioritization plan to have kind of a mix of all of these different types of projects, the causeway, the causeway, Framingham Road, and then, these little roads that are just missing these one final connection.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how we want to look at it. And then, I kind of, just as a first glance, looking at the information we had from the sidewalk committee, Mass DOT has, we have traffic counts, we have crash data. This is, they have maps for walkable areas, bikeable areas, so we kind of use all that. And then lastly, once we get the map, we kind of look at the map and say, all right, maybe we didn't think about this before. Maybe someone didn't, so let's do this. And, we kind of try to pull together a list, and then based on that, we kind of pare it down.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like I said, for me, I would have no, I don't think there's any problem having, say, either, a pedestrian bridge over Route 9 or one of the sidewalks on the causeway or something like that as the town's number one priority. That doesn't mean you're going to ask for money for it.
Mm-hmm.
It just means that it's viewed by the town as a priority. It's probably not the right job for this grant because it's going to take a long time to actually implement it.
Right.
So that, I think that's kind of how we want to, you want to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we move forward with this?
So, I think the best, I like I said, I went through this, kind of came up with a bunch of projects. Again, not an exhaustive list by any means. I think the best way to go about it is to kind of, whether it's everybody, we can either, we can go through the projects now, or everyone kind of go through this list, add to it as you feel fit. And then kind of meet together, everyone kind of rank them themselves. Then you come back and kind of compare all that. We can, I did the ranking so I think, and again, there's a difference between the ranking and the prioritization. So it's the ranking, and the criteria scores is to kind of help prioritize. Because maybe, maybe there's this one little piece of road that doesn't have a sidewalk. No one's really thought about it. And then all of a sudden it comes up and it's ranked, because of the score, it's ranked, number 5. And you're like, oh, all right, well, maybe that should be further, higher up on our list of what we want to do. When I did it, I had Main Street bicycle lanes. So this would be from Sears Road to Westboro. That came up as the top scoring project. And why is that? It's cheap, because it's all it is pavement markings. because the shoulders are already wide enough. So Mass DOT would have to do it. So Mass DOT would have to go out and put bike lane markings and signs out, just designating a bike lane. There's no right of way involved. There's no environmental involved. Is that the top priority to the town? Highly doubtful. So it's one of these things where you just kind of take an organic look at the rank. You score them. You see where it falls. You can also play. We can also play with these. We have each criteria listed here, and we have them weighted. And so if the town, there's different things that are more important. We want to focus on high speed roads, roads with higher pedestrian activity. It's context sensitive design, the most important thing, and the formula kind of can weight those criteria. So the rankings themselves is really just a tool to help with the prioritization.
Well, Bill, good question, Bill, though, I think in terms of, what we have to do, and if we got to get something in by the end of February to get the April round, not clear to me that there's enough time to actually do that, and that I think we need to get some input from people like Trails Committee. Karen, is that not something that ought to go to the Board of Selectmen to sign off on before it gets submitted?
Well, that's where I was just going to say. So the selectmen need to decide what the priority list is. I think this board might want to make recommendations of we think this is the way we should weight the stuff. We think it's more important that we have these things, and we know these projects are coming up, and we think they should be in the top 5 so that we can try to get funding for it or something.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, we agree we should get these other things on there, but when it gets to, at the select board meeting, and you're going to have more, public weighing in on it, I think there's going to be a lot of maybe movement or just input about it, versus for this group to say, hey, look, here's something that we want you to, it makes a lot of sense to keep these in the top 5. This is really where we think we need to go with this. We have input from other people, for these other things, but so it's a recommendation because the public is going to weigh in a lot more at a selectmen's meeting, as they usually do. And I just think it's, if we can give the guidance of, look, these are upcoming projects. These are things you guys put in the can in case money came up. we should make sure that they're prioritized on the list so that we can get maybe either complete streets, or we see the next project that comes up or money that comes up. Oh, look, pull this project off the complete streets. So
one thing
I think we should kind of.
Yeah. One thing just to keep in mind is you don't have to, like specifically with the complete streets grant, you don't have to, if you request a project, it does not have to be the top priority. So it doesn't have to be listed as number 1. It can be listed, you can request money for any number of projects up to that will go up to 400,000.
That's per year, one time 400, or 400 each time through in the year?
I think you can only apply once per year.
Okay.
It's $400,000 is the maximum you can apply for per application.
When did you say the next one is?
That one's in April.
April.
Can we prioritize looking at what we've come up with, things, if we're looking to get something in for February, what do we have in the pipeline that any of these will coordinate with? Example, Main Street. What would go in with Main Street so that potentially that is a priority right now? It's not necessarily the number 1 priority, but if there's something dealing with Main Street where it's going to be reconstructed, through Boston Road, whatever, what do we have here that it would make sense to advance right now? It might not be our top priority of something to do, but it would make sense to do it at the same time as we're doing Main Street and get is that, does that make sense? Karen or someone identifying, here's what we've got anticipated for 2021. So let's find out, what 300,000, 400,000, even $50,000. So we can try to advance some of these things at the same time. If we have Corderville Road, let's look at the Corderville Road pieces and see if we can advance that. There's some comments about, perhaps prioritize sidewalk connections in neighborhoods near the schools. Well, we have sidewalk prioritization from our sidewalk committee, correct?
Yes.
So can we take that and look at where it might make sense to advance some of those in the very close future, to get this first round going and possibly get some money. As I think you said, Greg, it's not necessarily going to be our number one priority, but the state may look at it because we're doing something already, so it makes sense to advance this as well and try and get a more complete project out of it.
Yes. So, and just so so on that listing I circulated, I did there's an ID number kind of on the left. Some of them are blank, but the ones that have numbers, those were the ID numbers those were the rankings that the sidewalk committee came up with.
Okay.
They used a slightly different criteria piece. They went 1 through 10 or 1 through 9, I think. So I kind of modified to fit this criteria, but it just kind of moved around and so their number one priority was Marlborough Road between the library and the railroad bridge. Which I think, is good. It's just a matter of there's a cost factor to that, because that's a larger project. And it's also, there is some environmental issues because there are wetlands along some of that area. And there's a constructability case. And I think on a lot of the sidewalks that were listed on the sidewalk committee list, the biggest issue with a lot of those are trees. So I think there needs to be a discussion on or maybe not a discussion, but there needs to be a kind of, is it the tree or the sidewalk? And in some cases it's just, there are plenty of roads where a sidewalk just doesn't make sense. I mean, just because it's just not going to fit without completely wiping out the character of the road. That's just the nature of the beast. I think the Deerfoot extension south of Route 9 was on here. You can barely get one car through there, much less a sidewalk. So, so that's just, to me, that just comes down to a constructability issue. In order to fit a sidewalk on there, you're gonna have to widen the impervious area. You're gonna have to almost triple the size of the road.
Yeah, and
This doesn't make sense. Yeah.
So
okay. So Karen, can you, working with Greg or someone, come up with, like, in the next 2 weeks, what you think we should try to advance in front of the selectmen so we can get something in for the end of February?
Yes, I think we can definitely do that. One thing I wanted to, one of the YouTube people put in a Q&A, and they were asking if, if we should prioritize near schools.
Yeah, I mean,
Most of our projects are already near schools, and it's actually really hard for us not to be within 2 miles of a school, with the amount of schools we have. So that's something that's sort of automatically happening. And then the other question was, because the Municipal Technology Committee is doing that, they're doing some kind of survey thing. I've got to look at it because the way the survey is set up, it's not, the way the input is, it's either 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's not, yeah, I think that's a good idea. If it could be free, I think that's a good idea. I'd be willing to pay $100 extra a year for that. And it's sort of just wrought with, hey, let's just be mad about this versus, hey, you're asking me what I think about my sidewalks. I don't have a sidewalk. I'm mad, right? Versus, hey, look, if we are doing sidewalks, here's this plan that we have. But getting input from everybody in the entire world as part of that, I don't think would necessarily be a good idea. So that is the answer to that. And he now has another question.
okay.
That was him.
What are our, I don't think that there's a question. Can I unmute? I don't think we have the time right now to take live questions unmuting.
Right. I didn't think this was a meeting that we could even have that, to tell you the truth.
No, that's what I was led to believe. So Mike, if you type something quick in there, we can look at it. If it's something we can respond to as we're going, but opening it up to the audience right now wasn't really part of what was going to happen in this meeting, because we've got so much to try and accomplish. But if you type something in there like some other people do, we can see if we can work it in.
While he's typing, one thing to
No,
consider.
never mind. I think we're being spammed out on that. Don't even look at it.
Okay.
All right. One thing,
Never mind. Yeah. Okay. I got it. That's all said. Move on.
Back to Bill's point. Bill, I think that you're onto a good one there. It sounds like it's worthwhile to figure out how we can hustle and get something in by the end of February. I think there are going to be 2 more selectmen's meetings in February here that obviously we're not going to make next week's, but maybe the one after that, to have something for the selectmen to look at and hopefully sign off on so we can get it in. I guess I'd be much more interested in focusing on sort of what are the top 4 or 5 or whatever that list is, and then having the rest of the list there for reference purposes. And I think, Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, we can actually update this as time moves forward here, right? For the next round, we can come back, change priorities if we choose to.
so you can do it once every 5 years. You can update it through Massdot.
Oh, so
But
this
as
is
long, sorry.
Okay, I'm
Go
going
ahead,
to say, Vanessa, if you're out there, is there a way that we can kill this question and answer?
It's been removed. I just found that out. He's been removed.
Okay.
So, so back to the, I think if we do make sure our top 5 projects, which I know Greg already knows what our projects in the cans are. So if as long as they're on there and we have a list of other projects at this point that we're pretty happy with, or that we kind of understand where Greg came up with them. In 5 years, we can definitely take the time in that time to revisit and really look at this in a little more in depth. But because, we're not right now, we're really focused on the idea that if that we have some buildable shovel ready projects, right? And so the downtown's one, and the St. Mark's intersections one, and St. Mark's Street intersection with 85. And then we have, we're trying to get the Marlboro Framingham Road connection, right? So those right now, if we kind of are moving with those, they're going to clearly take up the 5 years, right? And in the meantime, all the back list, it hasn't gone anywhere. Like, it's still there. And if it did come up that, hey, great, you know what? We are going to need to pave this road for some reason. Let's put in a sidewalk. It's on our list. And then we could pull one, and it doesn't matter where it doesn't sound like it matters where it's prioritized, as long as we say, this is what the project we want to do because we're ready for this project. We could possibly still get funding.
So, Greg, when is the next one after April? As you said, the fall, November?
That'd be in the fall. So generally the idea behind the kind of the way the funding goes here is that, you apply for April for, I think you get, I'm trying to remember when the award is. I think it comes in the summer. So, then it'll get, you'll get the money in the summer. And then
This summer or
Yeah.
summer of 22?
so it's not like it gets, if you apply, I can't remember if you apply in April, I think beginning of April, and then they take however much time it is to review those, they make the awards, and then you have, I want to say you have a year to use it, but you can get extensions.
But do you get the money for FY22 in this April?
I think so.
Not 23, huh?
No.
My question is, does it make sense to take a little more time for the fall submission and get a more robust list with more conversation around it? Or is it better to hurry and get the top ones on there and include anything that we think could be important in the bottom 50 or whatever, so we've got a placeholder for it?
Well, I think we should, if we got things that are going to happen this year, then I think we should, if you want to call it rush, we should get those on there so we can, not be sorry that they weren't on there when we're doing a project.
Yeah. That sounds reasonable. That just doesn't give us a lot of time here, but it's possible, I think. So.
Well,
All right, so I have the funding. So it's, sorry, tier 3 was May 1st. The tier 2 prioritization plan is April 1st. So, so the application for the construction would be for May 1st. Needs to be in by May 1st. Notice to proceed is mid-July to mid-late August. So you're talking construction in the fall this year through next year.
Okay, that's pretty quick then.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then October 1st, then the second round is October 1st. You get the notice to proceed is mid-January to mid-late February. So depending on the size of the project you're looking at, it wouldn't really matter if you get to hit the spring or the fall, because construction is going to be going on next year.
And so if we get our application on April 1st, let's say, do we get considered in round 2 as well for anything that doesn't get funded in round 1?
If you don't get funded, you can apply. If you don't get funded, you can apply the next round.
So if we don't get funded in round 1, then we can basically resubmit our application.
Yep.
It has to be the same application as we submitted for.
No.
This guy's actually earlier, so we could actually go back and rethink it for round 2. We don't get funded in round 1. So we can actually do it more often than once every 5 years.
Oh yeah. So you, sorry. No, you can apply as long as you don't have money that is outstanding. So if you if you apply and you get the grant, say in the first go around.
Yeah.
You can't apply again until you've spent that money.
Okay, but let's say you apply, you get 400,000, and you spend it in 1 year. Can you apply again the next year?
You can apply again the next year
with a totally different prioritization if you choose.
No, not a different priority. You just pick a project from that. Again, it doesn't have to be. You could pick.
One.
So if you have 50 projects.
Okay. Yep.
You could pick. So if you get say you get $400,000.
I got it.
On one. You could apply for $70,000. You have to take three projects where you have, like, say, you're looking for a flashing beacon at a trail crossing and pedestrian upgrades at a traffic signal. Maybe $70,000. So you can pick project 20 and 25 on your list
Mhm.
and say, we want to do this
Yeah.
because it fits with this.
Yeah.
Once you get that first grant, you're going to go to the, you're going to go back into the general population at the bottom of the list. But
It's okay. But again, it seems to me that it's important to hustle and get the first piece in with things we care about here. But it's also simultaneously important to make sure that we have a list of 50 or whatever the number is on here of things that we actually care about that we might want to come back to at some point in the future, because we won't get a chance to change that for another 5 years. So I think we need to pay attention to both of those, which I think we can certainly do in the next 30 days here if we keep moving on it.
Doable, Karen?
Sense. If any of you have comments, or when you look at it now you kind of understand the process a little better and everything, because that was one of the reasons I wanted to make sure kind of Greg explained all that too, besides just looking at the plan. If you now that you can look at it, and I will we'll get you the Excel version so that you can blow it up. If you go and just give me any ideas, and we'll put them in, and we'll put them in with comments of, this came up as an idea. And then we can revisit so that I guess we could vote, you guys could vote on what you want to have the selectmen vote on.
Okay.
Hopefully, what I might want to do is we'll send to the selectmen, hey, here's some draft information. If you guys have anything you want to weigh in on before our next meeting too, so then the selectmen could, if they had anything they wanted to add, so that it would go quickly through the selectmen, because we don't want to end up with 4 months with them or 4 meetings with them or anything either.
Yep.
Conveniently, we have a selectman on the board, so he might be able to influence a little bit.
Okay.
And again, I would, I guess what I would propose is that if people don't hear that, I could actually do a quick update at the member reports section of the meeting on Tuesday to say, this was the discussion that we had, this is what's coming, so be prepared, look for it, and here's what to expect, and here's some of the time pressure. Does that make sense?
Yes. Get us those Excel sheets, and I mean, even, as far as I'm concerned, you could get them to the selectmen as well, so they can start looking at it. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Aaron?
Yes, it does. That works for me.
But when you do that, that actually goes to the public as part of the selectmen's meeting packet. So just be prepared for feedback, comments from a variety of sources, which is a good thing, I think. But I'm sure we'll get something.
Well, whatever. If there's a list of 50 things out there, there'll be at least 50 objections that, this shouldn't be number one, this should be number two, whatever else.
But for each one on the list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and I think the idea is that DOT wants wants the opportunity for public input, whether that's at we've had some municipalities do, full range public meetings. We've had others, just present at a public board of selectmen meeting or planning board meeting, depending on wherever they feel it. But, I think the idea behind kind of the criteria and the ranking is just so that you have something to point to and say, this is what it said, and this is why we have these projects on there. And so that when you go to do a project, you have a list that, was approved, and you can say, no, this is we're picking projects from a list. It's not, we're not just going here, going there. There's reasoning behind it. And so I think that was always kind of the background of that criteria ranking.
All right.
Are we good with that?
Hey, Karen. Karen, can you hear me?
Yes.
At some point, I'd be interested in just to hear what your top 3 or 5 priorities are from the superintendent's perspective. You don't have to share them now if you don't want to. You can send them directly to the board in an email, but I'd be curious just to hear what your 3 or 5 top priorities are.
It's, I mean, ours, the DPWs would be the same that of the projects that we have, so it's easy. So I can definitely do this. So whether downtown with the Newton Street sidewalk, the St. Mark Street intersection, because we have sidewalk there that we're adding, Corderville Road, because we're heading south on Corderville Road as part of the downtown, right? So a little bit, the regular big Corderville Road project, which we might be able to get something down by the intersection, and then Marlborough Road getting all the way up to the railroad bridge. I would like to see us keep on there the whole Framingham Marlborough Road line, but I do think that might be worthy of a tip project. And that's something that I discussed a little bit with the selectmen when they agreed for us to do the survey for that, so that we could get some of that done. But as we know, that takes a while, and you know, I think we need to work on that intersection, if nothing else, of Acre Bridge and Framingham, Acre Bridge and Marlborough Road. So I'm not sure how we'll really work that eventually, but if we keep that whole length on that road, which is in this list, those few things are the real ones I think we need to worry about right now.
Okay. I would recommend that right now we support Karen's position on what is most important. She's working with us on a daily basis, and for us, it's, you know, we can offer advice on other things, but I would propose that we support the priorities that she has, that she just outlined.
I completely agree, Bill.
Okay.
I'd support those, but I'd add some others to it. I'm not suggesting those aren't important, but I think we need to explain that.
Well, we could certainly add others to the list, but I agree with Bill, and I think
Sure.
we should support Karen's top 5 projects. We can always add more to the list, but I agree. I think Karen's top 5 should be our priority.
And I mean, again, that's working with the selectmen. When it gets to the selectmen, they may have some other priorities, but so that's my motion. We support her top priorities, and working with the selectmen, try and get some of this stuff advanced that has a realistic chance of getting done with the projects that we have coming forward.
I'd second the motion.
Karen, any comment on?
So just a question. So
Yeah.
if with that, does that mean that I mean, because it kind of sounds like we want to add a little bit more to the list, and then, you know, kind of almost in conjunction with the selectmen, put things together. But did you guys want to weigh in? Like, do you want to have another meeting about this specific list, or do you want to wait? Like, I'm not sure if you do this vote, what you want to do from there. Does that make sense?
I mean, to me, you've been working on this with Greg, and in some cases with the selectmen. So I think we need to support what the priorities are based on what you know is going forward. I mean, to me, doesn't necessarily make sense to leave something off in favor of something else we might like to see, when then that project that's going to be done, that this would be incorporated with, it doesn't get done, and then we're looking to do it down the line later. Does that make sense? You know, like a sidewalk on Fairview. Well, that's a great idea, and if we can do it, but are there things right now, as you listed, Main Street and Newton Street, some of these other places that we've got work going to happen there? So it seems to make sense that we go after things that would tie in with those.
And
Okay. No,
Bill,
I
I
see what
don't
you're saying.
disagree with that. I think those are
Okay.
priorities, but I don't think that's the complete picture, so I can't support that motion. But that's good.
All right. Well, those in favor of that.
Aye.
Roll call. So say your name and
Mark, aye.
Jim, I.
Bill, I.
Divers, no.
Okay. So 3-1, we're gonna support that for now. Anything else on this, or can we move on to budget?
So Greg is going to forward some of the spreadsheet and the sidewalk map to us.
Yes, he'll send it to me. I'll send it right out. I'll send out tomorrow. And then, definitely, even though you did that vote, send feedback so that we can
Oh,
make sure
absolutely.
people's thoughts are on the list. And then as, and I'll send it on to selectmen also, because obviously we're gonna, we want to make sure, like you said, that we have a complete grouping of people to look at this.
Mhm.
Right.
I will do a quick update Tuesday night on what's coming. So.
Okay, good.
Okay. Good on that?
Yes, are you all set, Greg?
I'm all set.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, VHP.
Very helpful.
Thank you for coming and letting us entertain you.
Thanks, guys.
Hope we go
Night.
back.
Don't tell anybody about my hair, Greg.
No problem.
No.
God, it looks just like John's. All right. So let's move on to DPW budget.
Okay. I'm gonna make you small so I can find it. I was looking for it earlier on my desktop and I'm having trouble. So I sent out all those, what do you call it? Oh my gosh.
Papers.
Paper pieces of budget, right? And so you saw how now it's, you can get it online at that ClearGov, but I don't know if everyone has access to that. Do you know, Sam, if everybody can look at that yet?
I don't, you have to be set up for it, but I think committee members can see that if they get set up. Unfortunately, Tom LaFlamme was working on setting that up. He's now gone. So Brian Ballantyne, I assume, could get people access to that to see the various department budgets.
I gotcha. Okay, so if you're not looking at ClearGov, it's actually easier, I think, to read our budget because just quick with our budget, we have like locations, right? So you have a line item for, I don't know, tools, right? So we have tool line item, but we used to have it that there were tree tools. Then there's tools for the mechanic. There's general like tools, like admin tools. And then so we used to have all these locations. And what happens is, oh, by chance, we bought 3 chainsaws one year. And now the tree amount is over, but we didn't buy anything in the admin end of things. So the line item itself is not over, but each location's over. So what we end up doing with this ClearGov, because this is a problem, really a me problem, not anybody else's problem, but because it doesn't sort by line item, it sorts by location. What's happening is you get like a group of location, you'd have all these line items, and then you get the next location. So it's hard to just compare because we treat it like more of a bottom line, each line item. Like we don't worry as much about the locations. It's just sort of so we know where we're allocating stuff. What ended up happening is, so when I did that, if you go look at ClearGov, it'll show something and it went to 0, but it really didn't. It's up in another line item. Like we moved it all into the tree location. So it's probably easier if you don't look at that for now. Next year it might be really good, right?
That's pretty confusing, actually. So,
It did the ClearGov or the one I sent?
ClearGov.
Okay. Yeah, because I tried to just streamline it, and it's probably gonna be worse for like 2 years till the other stuff kind of goes off the screen. So anyway, the big thing, our budget, we ended up going up a lot in the trash budget. That's kind of like the most significant change we have. What ended up, that's because we went from paying nothing for recycling to now it's about $60,000 a year now. So that we put some in for this current year, so it didn't go up the full 60, but because of the fact that we didn't really know what it was going to be when it kind of came during budgeting, right? And we were like, oh, well, this is how much we're paying. Well, it turned out that we really needed to be paying more. They under budgeted us a couple times, and I was like, that's great, that's what we were at. And then after the votes and everything, they're like, oh yeah, we did this wrong, and this is actually what your rate's going to be. We haven't found necessarily a better outlet for anything. It's really difficult right now just to find cheap recycling. So, and it's because we don't haul it ourselves. That's part of it too. So we don't have that ability to do that. So that line item's up a lot, which is sort of drives a little bit of our change in the budget. We were asked to bring it down, the whole budget down so that like townwide, so that we could be just a 2% increase to the residents or 5%. So just the 2% increase to the residents, because some stuff's fixed, we can't adjust that. They allocated it out based on our budgets, and we were about $160,000 cut. And I have not answered that question yet because I really don't know what we would do. The services the DPW provides are mandatory services except for trash. That's not mandatory at all. But if we don't have it, I don't know if people do. But we can't just cut a service. So it's I don't really have a good response to that question yet. If we went down to the 5% budget, I've been very fortunate. The last 2 years I've had actually good liaisons with advisory. So this year I have Andrew Pfaff, and he was kind of looking at some stuff, and he came up with a few things that I think would work because it's small line items, but I'd increase them a little bit based on like 3 years ago, like the average over 3. But really, the last 2 years, we really haven't spent that much in them, so I think it's doable. And then the other thing is we did have I managed to do a little bit of more streamlining with our snow contractors, and that's going to get us some money. And Andrew had actually suggested that we might be able to lower it, and I was looking, and I said, geez, you know what, the streamlining we've done, I think we can actually get like $25,000 out of that. So so I think we're going to go with that, and it ends up, that cut was only going to be like 58,000, and I actually think we can come close to it. So I'm going to send that up to selectmen, which likely means that will be the cut. I didn't get asked for a water one. We are relooking at the rates, because if you guys remember last year when we went over the water rates, we had like a 3-year plan. So we were changing the tiers. The tiers were going up a certain percentage. And then the idea was the next year they'd go up like 5%. We weren't going to change the tiers, but we were just putting them up 5%. And then I think the following year was supposed to be 5 also. We just have them looking at it because the selectmen wanted to make sure we actually do need to go up 5, or we don't need more, we don't need less, right?
Water costs are going up though, right?
I think they need to go up, yes.
Water cost to us from MWRA.
Right, and we bought so much water this past year that we're going to pay next year, right? So
for the other members, the MWRA is getting crunched because, in fact, with the pandemic, water consumption went way down in Boston, and so water rates are a function of proportionate use. Boston is the 800-pound gorilla, and so their rates went down substantially. Their contribution, their cost went down substantially because people used a lot less water. So that meant a lot of what Boston was paying previously now gets spread across the other 58 communities. So we and many other suburban communities are going to get hit hard in terms of just the raw water cost going forward for the next year or two, probably, as the pandemic settles out here. So it's going to be an interesting hit. I think our rate was about 8% or something. Was that, Karen, or something? I can't remember.
Yes, yeah, and one thing that I think, to your point, which is a good point, is that I think we are going to see that for a while, because I don't know that businesses are going to go back to business as usual
Right.
even when the pandemic's over. So with that ability or that change, I think, yeah, I think we're going to see this happening. But we were
Karen,
trying to
that's
convince
exactly
ourselves, and we just have to have someone look at it. to
that's
make sure.
exactly what the guy, the head of Boston Water and Sewer, John Sullivan, made that comment at a recent NWRA meeting, said, we don't think it's going to get back to quotes normal for a while. So their consumption is still going to be down, he thinks. And our rates are going to continue to go up for at least a reasonable period of time here. So again, we passed that through essentially, but people are certainly going to feel that, I think.
Yes. Definitely. So like I said, with water, we didn't change much on that. I'm trying to just get my, I'm trying to open up the spreadsheets, but for the salaries and everything, like the whole budget. But I guess it'd be better to know if you guys had any specific questions about anything. I mean, I sent those and I suppose I could share screen, but I don't have it in Excel on my budget, on my laptop.
One of the things, Karen, that the capital committee has been talking about considerably is the hook lift truck in the capital budget. Is that in or out these days? Do you know, or?
Right now it's in. There was a question about the allocation because with our capital, right, it's partially used by water, it's partially used by highway and grounds. And so when we split stuff up generally, and this is just a good thing for you guys as members of this board to know. So we only have 3 water guys. We have 13 people total, 16 people total, but 13 crew members total. So it's about 25% of the workforce is from water. Then we have the issue of that there's grounds, there's highway, cemetery, obviously, trash. So who's using the vehicle? So we have for that hook lift, it'll be highway will use it for like 3 different types of things. The grounds will use it, and then water will use it to haul. Basically they use it at a water break. So it kind of worked out that we did about, I want to say 25%, I think we put towards that water would pay. And, it's kind of like, well, can we allocate more towards that from water? And I mean, it's possible. It's just that makes sense to me. So that's usually how I do it. I base it on, if it was mostly going to be water use, then water would pay the majority of it.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless of staffing and everything. But with this, really what they're doing, it's water break, and it's just taking material out of the ground and bringing new material over.
Mm-hmm.
So
it looks like the truck is in. There may be some conversation around the allocation.
Right, exactly.
Impact on the current budget numbers that we're seeing here.
Yeah, and it does seem. I mean, I know we have. It's a tough budget this year. I think I feel bad for everybody looking at the whole picture because I only have to look at my piece.
So what do you need from us on the budget? And I guess, is it expected to be changed as we get closer and they figure out there's not enough money to do everything?
I'm sure it will get changed. Even I don't know if we'll end up below the 58. One of the things that keeps happening, and I think you guys do realize it, but I'm not sure if, like, I kind of have to explain it to advisory and stuff too a lot, is that, other departments do things and they affect us, right? So
Right.
extra police cruisers, we pay for the gas, right? So that might change our gas money. It changes our mechanic a little bit, their time, their allocation, and maybe I end up with a little more overtime because they have to deal with, I don't necessarily put in the overtime with the mechanic, like thinking that's going to happen, but I do have to put in more gas. Like I can't help that. So a lot of times these kind of little things like, okay, now we're going to put irrigation at the police station, the new police station, or we've got more grass there than we had at the other place, and how that affects us. So a lot of that changes things for us, and it doesn't necessarily, not that anyone should ask us, hey, can you afford this to happen in that department? But It needs to be clear that we are affected a lot by other departments. So some of our changes, like we have a lot of money put aside or in the budget for police details. And they deserve to be paid. We have to pay them. We have to use them. It's safe. But it does end up increasing our budget when their contract changes, right? So it's just stuff so most of the stuff that we have in there right now, they might try to cut it more, but the problem we have this year is that there's not a lot of advisory reserve either. And so if everybody cuts thinking, oh, it's okay, because if I go over and I actually still provide the service that I think I'm going to try to cut, but I'll have advisory reserve funds, there's not going to be enough to go around to everybody, because if everyone has that thought process. So I don't think you guys need to vote it or anything. I think your charge is that you have to review the budget, ask your questions, but you don't necessarily have to support it or not support it. It's, you can if you want, but it is going to change. And the DPW, police and fire, we're the three biggest budgets. We're almost equal. The only reason DPW is higher is because of water. We have like 2 budgets. So that one pushes us over, but that's not tax based. So DPW, police, fire, we have to take the hits because there's no one else to take them. But the problem is that as other smaller departments grow, their percentage might grow a lot, but the money doesn't come out that much, so that, they're immediately like, when they're trying to make these cuts, they're talking people, and we have the ability at least to be like, all right, we're not going to cut trees anymore. Like we just have to stop this year and only deal with things that fall and cause problems. And it's not a good plan, not a good strategy, but if we have to, that's where we end up going. If they decide that, oh yeah, we are going to go to a 2% budget.
Okay.
I don't know where else we'll cut. We can't cut people.
At this point, I support you've, in the years I've been involved, you always have a pretty well prepared budget, a pretty well prepared capital plan. At this point, we've reviewed it. I don't think there's much we can do other than, I support what you're trying to do, but until we hear more what's going to happen overall with budgets and under the guidance and leadership of the selectmen and other boards that are Mark and Brian, where they're going with things, I don't think there's much more we can do with it at this point.
And the governor just came out with his new budget, I guess yesterday, today or something. So that creates some uncertainty, and there's some good news and not so good news in there. So I think it's unclear what's going to happen in terms of state support yet, but we'll figure that out over the next weeks here, and that will make things a little more clear too. So
Okay.
it's still a little
It's a good thing about the later town meeting, right?
well, one good thing, I guess, but
Yeah,
There's always a positive end, right?
yeah, it'll be warmer. Okay.
With-
Anything else? Jim, Mark?
Not for me.
Not really. I mean, I was thinking of a couple, we're not going to get into that though, but I was thinking of a couple other sidewalk places, but we'll get into that some other time.
Add them to the list.
We've been through that already.
Add them to the list.
Yeah.
I'd rather have too many things
Yes.
that are on the placeholder list than forget something that's important. So
Right. Yes.
Yeah, definitely send them to me.
Yeah,
Jim.
send them. Any ideas
Right.
for Karen?
What?
She can let
Sorry.
us know. Okay. Anything else? I would move to adjourn at, I have 9:46. Is there a second?
Jim will second that.
Okay. Bill votes aye.
Mark, aye.
Sam,
Jim,
aye.
aye.
Jim, aye. Okay, so we are adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
sorry it was on the later side.
I apologize.
All right.
Works out good for me, but-
Billy, you heard about Ron Garcia.
I did. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Let's do it. too many people going, and
Yeah.
Edna McGillicuddy as well. I don't know if you knew them.
Oh, live down on Parkerville Road.
Yeah.
Which,
Right?
Bill,
Yeah.
which